100 Wilfred Nancy at lower.com field, the home of Columbus Crew. 42 matches played, only 2 defeats. New York City will be visiting Columbus for the second time in 3 weeks. We're going to have it for you on the New York City FC Network, and we're going to talk a lot about it here. Also, a moment of silence in the 13th minute. We'll explain on NYCFC Views Live.
Turn up your volume. Because you're about to listen to The Sick Podcast. NYCFC Views.
Collins approaches the shot, and New York City wins the first MLS Cup on their first try, and they're going crazy. Tiene tiro y gol! Gol! New York City es el campeón de Major League Soccer!
The sickest New York City FC podcast. It's gonna be sick.
And hopefully with good audio. I sound better now, Roberto?
Nope, you don't.
So
you don't. So you would have to go into sound settings.
I did that already.
If they keep it further away from you.
Is that what it is? Like that?
Yeah.
Can you tell?
It'll be better. Yeah.
All right. I thought we did a sound check before we started. Everything was fine. So, best laid plans, but live, and this is what happened with live, and now I'm blinking in and out. Maybe it's our Wi-Fi in our lovely hotel here in Columbus.
I didn't check it. I did not check the Wi-Fi to see how fast it is, but it should be decent enough.
We'll make through. You look good.
We'll get through. Yeah, we'll do good. We'll be fine. How are you?
Not too bad. I think anybody that's flown a lot has a flying story, but we had a landing situation, not the actual landing, but about 5 minutes before where I guess we hit one of those pockets, or I don't know what happens when you all.
Well, we hit some bad turbulence, and of course it was like, I got to go to the bathroom. Let me go to the bathroom before we land. And I get into the bathroom, everything is fine, and then all of a sudden it's like, is he in there? Yeah, all right, fine. Bang! All of a sudden, we're all over the place. And at that point, I can't leave. you know what I mean? I can't leave the bathroom. And I'm oh, God.
No, you put both.
Yeah. I'm like,
it's a technique.
God. I had like one hand on the ceiling, another one grabbing it down. Oh, it was just crazy. And then when I finally did leave the bathroom and I finally got my butt into my seat, and thankfully it's like only 3 rows away because we sit in the back of the plane and turbulence is always worse at the back of the plane. And so then it really started fishtailing. And I'm not afraid of those things. It's like I don't think the plane's going to break apart or anything like that because I know that these planes can resist a lot. So I'm well informed on all these things. It's just that what you don't want to happen. You don't want to get caught without your seatbelt on, because as happened earlier this year in the Singapore Air flight, where the plane went into major turbulence and then dropped down, people that didn't have their seatbelt on literally hit the ceiling, and one guy hit it so hard that he wound up dying. So you've got to keep your seatbelt on. And these things can happen like this.
So you have a family member that is a flight attendant, and that makes you an expert on Boeing and those kinds of things?
I've learned a lot because I read up on it because of that.
You are, I tell you, you are something, Roberto. You do know a lot. I'm amazed by some of the things that you can teach us. And,
I am full of absolute mindless information. I am the king of that.
All right. Oh, by the way, we're gonna throw this. I'm wearing my hoodie this week.
Yeah, you are.
From Homage. We'll get to that. Why don't I put it up there? It is ultra comfy. I've got to admit. I mean, I'm not necessarily saying this just because there's an ad here and they're sponsoring a little bit of what we're doing, but it really is a soft shirt, and I like hoodies. Mm-hmm. And and airplanes are notoriously freezing, so especially the ones we fly, and so it's nice to have like a kind of a long sleeve, the whole thing. So
no, it's very, very cool.
And if you go to the link in the description. That's where you can order hoodies.
On YouTube. You've got to go to the link in the description on YouTube.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Which just reminds me, I've got to
I have to do it too. Yeah,
I have to share this just in case people, what would like to know that we're actually on. I think it'd probably be a good thing.
Shane, you have to keep reminding us of this.
Yes, that we're on.
Yes. So, all right, I've retweeted mine. All right, let's get into it, Roberto. I want to start with the tragic side of things. And I'm just going to admit, I'm not a huge NHL fan. I have heard of this player. And I do remember when he was in New Jersey because he was in all the, he was a great player on the scholastic level. But Johnny Gaudreau, and his brother Matthew Gaudreau, Columbus Blue Jackets star is Johnny, and his brother played some minor league hockey. But even this, they were visiting back home in Jersey for their sister's wedding, and they were riding bicycles together, and an apparent drunk driver hit them both, and they both perished. And I just
horrible.
And anybody that rides a bike in any sort of area where you always have near misses because cars don't necessarily always pay attention, or they're trying to do things and they don't really see you on the side of the road. I mean, it's best to just drive on trails and on maybe sort of barren roadways. But eventually, sometimes you have to get yourself out onto the highway or close to it. And it was on the street where their parents live. So they're just like it sounds to me like they were just riding to get home, or maybe they were just leaving the house and riding. But unbelievable. So you sent a nice
story
thing
that
out.
I read, and maybe I got different details than you. It was the guy who wound up hitting them was trying to pass two cars on this road, whatever this road was, and he was driving inebriated. And so that's how the accident
that hasn't
happened.
been.
It was a drunk driver, and he's in jail right now. He's in jail.
Yep, it hasn't been confirmed that he was. It's just that hasn't been confirmed yet, unless something's happened in the news since we landed. So that could be.
Well, that was a report that I read from the AP.
Yeah.
That they had him in there because he was inebriated.
Yeah. All right.
So it's terrible. The funny thing is, I mean, not funny really. Sorry for that choice of words, but I knew of Johnny Gaudreau because I'm a hockey fan, but also because when I was still working at ESPN, there was a World Cup of hockey, and there was basically a youth team from the United States that was playing in this tournament as well. So we had the U.S. national team, and then there was like a U21 or U22. It's been several years, so I don't exactly remember the details. And Johnny Gaudreau was on this team, and I got to call a lot of these games, and I was just fascinated by him and by this really young team that did very, very well. And I remember that they wound up beating Sweden. They wound up beating Sweden in this tournament. And it was like a huge story at the time. And Johnny Gaudreau was one of the players there.
Well, are you bringing it up? Is he a relative? Is that his father or something? Is that what you're saying?
No, that was Johnny Gaudreau. No, that was Johnny Gaudreau.
Oh, that was him. Oh,
yeah.
Okay.
No, he was a member of the U.S. national team. He was one of the best players. He was a star in Columbus. I believe his brother played for New York City. He assisted in that game-winning goal, by the way, when they beat Sweden, for Nathan McKinnon. So I actually have the audio of that. I have the video of that. And that I've used actually to, when I try to get a job, that I've done hockey before. And I have a video of that. It was crazy because it was like 3-on-3 back and forth going back. It was just incredible. That whole series was just great. The World Cup of hockey that year was fantastic.
Cool moment. Well, the as you put out, you put it in our group text, but the Columbus supporters have requested that the New York City supporters join them in a moment of silence in the 13th minute of the game. We're broadcasting tomorrow, so I want to pay particular attention ourselves to see if we can, share that experience. A little more difficult on the radio, but it'll be, an odd moment and a wonderful moment of tribute when the place goes silent in the 13th minute while the teams continue to play. I wish there was a way the game could stop too, but
it's harder.
Yeah.
But at the same time, it's the supporters doing the right thing, and they've been tributes similar to that before, and they've pretty much worked pretty nicely. So it's going to be a very nice tribute. We know that there's going to be a big crowd at lower.com field, 20,500, which is basically a sellout, there. So it hit this community really, really hard.
Yeah. All right, so we'll get to the game, the Columbus game in a minute. We need to kind of backtrack a little bit, and I think of these two brothers as kids. For us, for their parents, obviously they're kids. I thought New York City, the 2-2 result with Chicago was. I said think of as many D words during our commentary. The D words, disastrous. Chicago is delirious. Diabolical. I mean, there's a bunch of them, but you know what? I don't know how much you noticed it, but I smiled a lot that night. It was kids' night, and the club did such a great job involving children in all the different little aspects, including a junior reporter who had a chance to conduct an interview with Santi Rodriguez. And a young lady who did announce the starting lineups, and then on field. I mean, every aspect of the game, children were involved. And
the part that was cool, I don't know I'm sure you noticed it, but you didn't mention it right now. But the part that that seemed to be the biggest part of it was when they did the introduction of the players, and instead of having their photos on the board, drawings. They had the drawings made by the kids.
Oh,
that was fantastic. Awesome.
And
it
when
was
Martina,
very, very cool. I mean, really, compliments to New York City, to anybody who thought of that idea and then putting everything together. Compliments all around. They really, really deserve it. And they had a really big crowd too, 24,500 basically for that game, which is the second largest crowd we've ever had in Citi Field behind the Red Bull game.
Yeah, it was. Those artistic renderings were. They had it media for the starting 11 that they put up on Twitter or X. It was somebody, one of the players was designed, and then Alonso Martinez with that first half brace, and they'll put it up on the screen, and there was that draw. No, you're right. That was the coup d'etat. It really was to see those renderings. So keep doing the kids' night once a year, or do it more than once a year, because it's a good feel. Now, it
really is.
So, Roberto, there's ties that sometimes feel like wins because, you come back and you nick one late and you go like, oh, my goodness, I thought we were losing. And then, of course, there's the draws that feel very much like losses. And this 2-2 result against Chicago. There's no question about it. A loss. I don't care if they got a point in the standings. That game was a loss. And that's the only way to look at it. But we'll give them a point for their first half efforts, I guess.
There was a stat that we read. I'm sure you read it as well. That New York City, coming into the 75th minute with a 2-0 lead, was 85-0-0 in their history.
Well,
and now they've blown that, and it turned into a tie. And all you have to do is go back 2 weeks, and they had a 2-0 lead in the 79th minute against Cincinnati, and that turned into a 4-2 loss, allowing 4 goals in 10 minutes. So, look, something's wrong. Something has to change for New York City, because this is now becoming something that's very, very familiar. And this team, they're going to have to learn how to play these games out and retain these points. It's okay, you give up a goal, that happens, but you can't give up 2, and you certainly can't give up 4. And there's something that's off that we know that the team is working on, either being with addressing individual errors by players, addressing tactics, addressing how they're finishing, evaluating all of this. You know that they're burning the midnight oil there to try to figure all this out, but they better figure it out, because these are points that aren't coming back, right? Obviously, the 4-2 was against Cincinnati, and that one didn't really matter that much because it was part of League's Cup and both teams had advanced. But they can't continue to do this, and it's problematic. All these late goals that this team is giving up, it really is.
Well, you can't be a championship team if you can't see it. That's a fact.
And
look, probably one of the best 1v1 defenders in the league is Tavon on any team. I know within the club that's the way. And so what he did on the penalty, where Gutierrez scored the late goal to tie it and make it 2-2, it was a definite handball. It was in the area, and it was just crazy how he contorted his body to try to deny the service when all he needed to do was move his feet. I'm not a proponent of putting your arms behind your back. I don't like that. But he would. That was the.
But it can't be up here. But it can't be up here either.
Opposite of behind your. That was in front and wide, right, everywhere. It was. It was. It was unfortunate. It was poor on his part, but he's had so many good moments defensively. Yeah. It's just. It was 100%. Odd. It was just odd.
It's been his best season by far.
Yeah, it was unnecessary. It's crazy. So what happens in those moments of the game? It is late in the game. You work hard during the match, and I think sometimes, your mental capacity sometimes lacks as your fitness is drained during the course of a match like that.
Of course,
but it was a match where New York City was in control, but you could see it coming with Taylor. I don't know. I don't know this factually, but I would say right before that, he made 3 consecutive passes that were picked off and turned into counterattacks for Chicago. So he was kind of in a bad way. So I don't know if he was gassed. I'm not sure what was going on. But again, we laud him tremendously for what he does on the defensive side. And now he's third on the team with 5 assists and, how he's improved his attack. So, I mean, he's improved the player this year pretty dramatically. But this was a poor moment for him in the club, and it doesn't impact their place in the standings. They've got Derby with the Red Bulls coming up in the not too distant future, and they're 3 points behind the Red Bulls. So if they can keep pace with them, they actually have the first tiebreaker to get into 4th place. So it's from all that standpoint, it's not maybe a disaster, but for the moment. All the D words. Think of some D words, Roberto.
I'll digress. How about this? I'll digress a little bit.
Yeah, there's one.
And the digression will be this. They lost 2 points on this. So yes, they're still within 3 points of the Red Bulls, and they're 1 point ahead of Charlotte. But they could have been 1 point behind the Red Bulls and 3 points ahead of Charlotte. And those 2 points are going to come into play towards the end of the season. Here's the thing. Okay, history teaches us that New York City doesn't get very many wins at Red Bull Arena when they're playing the Red Bulls. Okay, they only have 2 in their history. If I'm not
those
wrong.
Kind of stats. Yeah, I don't.
But if they wind up 4th and 5th, and Red Bulls are 4th, they're playing at Red Bull Arena 1 game to advance.
They play.
Actually, no, they're playing 3. I take that back. They would be playing best of 3. They'd be playing, because it's 4-5, they'd be playing best of 3, but still they'd have to play 2 games at Red Bull Arena.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. But in essence, New York City's in control of their own destiny to finish in the top 4.
Yes.
Because they have the tiebreaker right now on Red Bulls, even though they trail by 3 points, they played the same amount of games. Well, that'll be fun to talk about that game when it comes up. We're approaching the international break. We got this 1 game tomorrow night, Columbus Crew SC. And how about this? Here, so I said it at the top. 42 games under Wilfred Nancy at lower.com. 2 losses, 95 goals for, 36 goals against. In essence, they beat everybody they play at lower.com 3-1. So maybe go back and that 1-1 result's not so bad. But I think that result flattered New York City FC. And please, I know Nick has talked about how, the possession. Cucho Hernández, you're going to hear a question I had for Nick in my pregame, and I want to know what you think, Roberto. Cucho Hernández had 8 shots in that game, probably should have had 2, probably 3 goals. in that game. Shots that he would normally finish. He had 8 shots. Is a lot. So with that, and he's now got 46 goal contributions in his last 43 games. He's got 11 goals and 9 assists in his last 14 games, all competitions. This guy is going to contribute to 1 or 2 goals tomorrow night, statistically leading in. So what I asked Nick is would you prioritize this guy and maybe even man mark him and do something maybe beyond extraordinary, I would say, because that's not the way they would normally do this. But so that's what I asked Nick, and here was his response. Ever alter how you go about things in order to put a particular attention or mark even on somebody like Cucho Hernández? He's going to decide the game most of the time.
I think you can. We don't. We obviously highlight the threats of the opposition, but for us, we defend as a team, right? So if we can control spaces and we can control the amount of time he has the ball and the amount of dangerous areas he gets into, then we can defend the game. I think that's almost the principle of every top player in the league, and Cucho is up there, right? I think we kept him fairly quiet in the home game, but he scores the goal, right? You rely on individuals to play at the highest level of their game when the game is decided on individual moments. You're hoping it's a defensive moment for yourself when you're playing up against someone like Cucho.
Yeah, and I'm of the coaching school of pressure, cover, balance, and having the team defend. I just was curious as to how he might be handled, because he receives the ball so often in between the lines, and it seems like there's indecision between whether a back should come with him, and when they do, they usually foul him, or whether it should be taken care of by a midfielder or a winger dropping down. Is that part of the dilemma?
Well, I think the dilemma is not so much how you deal with Cucho. I think the dilemma for playing against a team like Columbus is whoever you leave, they're going to find the free player. So if you want to double up on Cucho or have someone protect space for Cucho, then Zawadzki or Nagby's going to have the ball, or Almundsen or Moreira, or they're always going to find the free player because it's in their DNA. It's a principle of how they build the game, right? So, for me, I think the only way to deal with a team like Columbus is to be aggressive and go man for man.
All right, and that home loss, the 3-2 loss earlier, where he was referring to Cucho Hernández. So New York City lost 3-2 at home, the 1-1 draw in the Leagues Cup, but losing on penalties, and now the match tomorrow. So, Roberto, before you comment, my idea, and I wish I brought it up just at least, where we could have a good time and chuckle about it. Justin Hack, New York City bred, kind of he's got that trash talking ability. He's tough as nails. Why not just start Hack and tell him to get under the skin of Cucho Hernández for every moment of this game, the old follow him to the sideline when he gets a drink of water, that whole thing. Cucho Hernández, he's got a bit of a temper. I mean,
he does.
I could see him like turning to Hack at one point and slugging him or doing something that would just alter his mentality, but maybe not. I mean, this guy's the best number 9 in the league. You can throw out anybody you want as far as what he does off the ball and how he helps defensively also, and he can score in the air, left foot, right foot. I mean, the guy is he's so much fun to watch. He's so effective at what he does. He's been called up to Colombia. This is a legitimate call up this time, I think. And it's nice to see that guys doing well in the MLS are, getting guarded as well, and he's the call up.
He's a special player, right? I mean, he's developed under Nancy. And they haven't always seen eye to eye. Remember, there was a time he got suspended a couple of games for
right. We never knew what. Never said no. Don't say what he was suspended for because it was never confirmed.
It was never confirmed, but there was something happened. There's something that happened, or maybe something happened. We don't know.
Sure. Yeah, something happened.
And he was suspended. And then what game was it? It was in the game before New York City played Columbus. He was visibly upset when the ball wasn't shared with him and other players were taking shots. He was visibly upset. So yeah, you can get Don't do that tomorrow, by the way. Nick's watching. Don't do that tomorrow. If New York City sees them in the playoffs, do it then.
What, Markham?
The way you said, have Hackett under his skin. Because Hack is at least physically, able to do that.
Yeah, you bump them, you do things. You'll probably get booked at some point in the game. But, I'm not. Like I said in the cut, I'm not a proponent of that. I do.
Although you suggested it.
Because that's how special this guy is, and he'll be involved in a goal tomorrow night. If Columbus wins the game, Cucho Hernández will be the guy that wins them the game, in my opinion, as he basically did in the Leagues Cup when New York City didn't deny the service. He got the free header cutting in front of Hanasiewicz, and that's so. If somebody is on him, Diego Rossi, he's having a great year. Yeah, yes, Nagby can control the game. Yes, when they swing it to either side on the flanks, Arfston and Farsi, they're very good players. But there's one guy who decides a lot of the games. So that's the only reason I brought it up, is because of this guy's dominance. 46 goal contributions in his last 43 games. Are you kidding me? I mean, that's
pretty good.
Nuts.
I mean, but that also talks about the level of quality that the Crew has, because it's very hard to get an assist when the guy you're giving the ball to shoots wide.
No, I'm with you, man.
I have found that in my many years of covering soccer, is that if the guy shoots wide, you don't get an assist. So it helps to have a very good team that is very well coached surrounding him. I mean, the only time that they faltered this year was in Pachuca. And remember that this is a team that got a really bad case of food poisoning the day before.
Yeah, they're getting in all these finals, and then they've got Campeones Cup coming up too.
When they play America,
on September 25th. So these matches are fun. Well, they're the most entertaining team in the league. This side of Miami, I think Miami, you focus on the superstars here. Yeah, Hernandez, but my goodness, to see Steven Moreira, the right central defender, posting up at the top of the box, and Cucho Hernández working a combination off it. I mean, the stuff is really, really entertaining if you love the game. Now, one other Nick clip I want to play, Roberto, for you, because I think we both sat in the room, and I don't know this, but I didn't know this, is that Nick Cushing several years ago worked in the Right to Dream Academy in Ghana, which is where players are discovered, they're coached, they're discovered. A lot of them come in and go to either prep schools or are put into collegiate programs here in the States, and then they become eligible for Major League Soccer. Yao Yeboah is one of those. But anyway, Yeboah scores this goal to beat Philadelphia at Subaru Park in Chester on Wednesday night. Columbus with 9, right? 9
they
changes
started
to their lineup.
9 changes, right? 9 changes in the lineup. I think Arfston and Odmundson were the only 2 guys that had started the previous game. Now the game changed, right? I mean, the game was pretty pedestrian up until they came. Yes,
Amundsen did not start the Leagues Cup final. Chiburko did. I'm pretty sure.
Well, everything I read said in the last 2 games.
But Roberto, let me segue into Nick, and then we'll talk more about it. Okay. Here's Nick regarding Yao Yeboah. I don't know if we would have expected him to score the goal, but he did. Good finish, and they come away with a win there. So what can you say about Columbus recently? I think the only thing you could maybe think is that they've played a lot of games, so maybe you can catch them at least a little exhausted.
Well, firstly, I was really happy. I watched the game, obviously, for scouting purposes, but I was really happy for Yao. I'm really close with him. He's a guy that I coached at the Right to Dream Academy in Ghana in 2011, I think it was, and he was a real young guy then in the group, and I spent some time there, and to see him play in MLS, and I've met with him and spoke with him a few times, so I was happy to see him score. But I think it's a marker of a good team, right? We know they're a top team. I think we know they play a really fluid style. They score a lot of goals, but what they're showing now is that they have a squad. They have a depth that can win on the road with 9 changes. And
so I was like, wow. So the next pregame, if I can figure out the time, I'm going to talk to Nick about Right to Dream Academy, because it's a group that's given a lot of opportunities to a lot of players, not just in MLS, but just the ability to come from these, severely underserved areas and get a chance. But I see you in your notes. You said Molde Amundsen did start against LAFC. I just rewatched the game, so shame on me.
You didn't even notice him.
Well, what I really you're right. You're right. But the one thing I really noticed, how about this? And so Wilfred Nancy, so he starts Nick Hagen, the Guatemalan keeper, in the first 2 Leagues Cup matches. Then Patrick Schulte starts against New York City FC in the quarterfinal, and Schulte plays the next game, the semifinal, and then Nick Hagen plays the final against LAFC. So this is pretty interesting stuff. Nancy put is like, I wanted him to finish what he started for us. So how about that?
I think it's a really good move. Okay, so the reason Hagen started was because of the fact that Schulte was with the U.S. Olympic team in Paris. So Hagen gets a chance. He starts. So now you get Schulte back, and you don't want him to rust sitting on the bench. So he gets him a couple of games, but he feels obligated that, as you said, Hagen started this, let him finish it. Good for Nancy. I mean, seriously. I mean, I think it keeps everybody involved. It also shows a great amount of trust. And the one thing that I loved, that I absolutely loved, and this was like a 2-second thing on Apple TV because they went to it for a second and then they went away from it. And I'm like, this is a story, okay? The guy who came out to hug Hagen and celebrate with him was Schulte. He came out and he just like grabbed him and they started to jump and then Apple TV went away from that. And I'm like, that's a great moment.
It's a great moment. That massive a story. I mean,
I think it's a good story because it talks about. See, I love this sort of stuff. Maybe you're jaded because you're a coach.
No, it's not about being jaded.
Because there's a rivalry. There's a rivalry, right? Because everybody wants to start and everybody wants to play. But at the same time, you're teammates, and I think that's great.
Schulte's the clear number 1 of this team. He'll be in goal tomorrow night. We don't know the lineups. I'm saying, so the clear number 1 came out and said, oh my God, this guy that puts in so much time, so much effort, had to flee Israel where he was playing to get away from the war. I mean, this guy, this guy Hagen's been through it, and Schulte recognizes that. So it's wonderful, but I don't think
that's what I'm saying. It's really nice.
Think it's that incredible. I don't think a big deal had to be made of it. You mention it and go. That would be my thing. But I understand what you're saying. It was a nice moment. There's little question of that when the number 1 hugs the number 2 after a big game like that. And the thing about Amundsen too, this is where I got confused. He was a sub the previous 3 games, and then he starts the final. So it's like it's really interesting how that works. And then he was a sub against Philadelphia on Wednesday night. So it's hard to even.
No, he started against Philly.
No, he was a sub against Philadelphia on Wednesday night. I have it here in my notes.
You're gonna make me double check because they said that only 2 players made only 2 players started both games.
Yeah, you have to look it up again. I've been wrong. If I get wrong again, boy, my Amundsen errors.
He's going to think that it's personal. By the way, yes, Amundsen started.
Okay.
And not only did he start, he played 90 minutes. That you didn't notice him again.
I didn't watch that full match, so I can't play Amundsen, who has signed a contract extension, so he will be at Columbus for at least a couple of more years.
I may have been wrong on one of the guys, by the way. I said that it was Arnstead that had started. I guess it wasn't Arnstead. I think it might have been Sawatsky. It might have been Sawatsky was the other guy.
Here's the other thing about Columbus.
Yes, it was.
Here's the other thing about
Sawatsky. I apologize.
Here's the other thing. Here's the other thing about Columbus. So you just mentioned Sawatsky, in the midfield. So he has seamlessly moved in for Aiden Morris, which is, pretty phenomenal that he's been able to do that seamlessly. Schulte in goal, their clear number 1 goalkeeper. Jason Russell Rowe, who's not a starter generally, but he's a very dangerous player off the bench. And I'm leaving one out. Who is it? There's a fourth player that I'm not coming up with right now. Zawadzki, Schulte, Russell Rowe. There's a fourth player that's not coming to mind, but they all came up from their 2 team that won the MLS Next Pro title in 2022. So it's interesting that Laurent Courtois was the manager of that team before he took over CF Montreal, and on the same wavelength as Wilfred Nancy ultimately with these players. So all good. So this is the challenge for New York City. Yeah, they need a Tigres effort tomorrow night.
Yes.
They should just get into the locker room and then replay the Tigres game while they're getting changed, because that's the effort they need.
Absolutely. And look, not only tomorrow, I mean, from here to the rest of the season, this is the way they got to play. That's the way that they have to play. And at the end of the day, you have a very, very good goalkeeper in Matt Freese, who has saved their bacon a lot, because New York City does have one of the best records of goals against within MLS. Columbus Crew is number 1, but New York City has a pretty good record as well. And one of the main reasons is that Freese has 99 saves this season, which puts him tied for number 3 in MLS, behind McCarthy and Pies.
His save percentage has been in the top 5 all year too, and his goals against, he's been either anywhere between number 3 in the league to number 6 in the league ever since really the beginning of the year. So no, it's been a phenomenal year for Matt Freese, who I don't know if you saw this, and this is important. He was named to the executive committee of the MLS Players Association.
Yes,
along with Alex Bono, the DC United keeper. There's 9 executive committee members. Interesting. I was just reviewing it again. Eric Miller is still on there. He's been there for a long time, the former New York City back. But 4 of the 9 Exco members are goalkeepers. I wonder if there's a slight, there's something there in the goalkeeper realm. The other 2 are Clint Irwin and JT Marcinkowski. And Roberto, I thought it'd be nice to note the New York City FC internationals who have been called up during this international break. New York City actually not playing a game during the international break, which to me, if I think of all the 10 years we've been doing this, it's rare that they don't have a game scheduled during the break. Alonso Martinez to Costa Rica, another item where it's great to see that MLS excellence is recognized by these countries.
Yes.
Maximo Carrizo, 16 years old. He's going to go with the US U17s.
Yes, I love that, because remember at one point his dad had sworn off the US 17s because he was brought into one of the camps and he barely played any minutes, and Augusto thought that it was a waste of time. And this is maybe a year and a half ago.
That was a U15 camp.
Well, okay.
At that time, but I guess things have changed there.
Good.
Jovan Mijatovic, Serbia U21s. They've got Euro qualifiers, as does Micha Ilinic with the Slovenia U21s. They actually lead their group ahead of France, which is pretty cool.
And they play France and Cyprus.
Yes. Christian McFarlane, England U17s, and Tomas Romero with the senior team, El Salvador. And in just a little bit, Roberto, I'm going to play something I think you'll enjoy from Hugo Perez. I know you knew I was speaking to him last week as part of my Sirius XMFC show, and it'll have something to do with the U.S. and El Salvador. So that's coming up in just a little bit. And then the U.S. Open Cup, we got LAFC hosting Sporting Kansas City. I think it's interesting to note. I mean, the Buffalo Bills of MLS right now are LAFC.
Yes, they are.
This will be.
Although they did win one. They did win one. They're the champions in 2022, so they did win that one.
Yes.
Buffalo Bills never won.
But they lost. That's true. So good correction. But man, I have needed to be corrected so many times tonight. It's where's my substitute?
So have I. We've both been terrible.
Where's Chris Sakonis when I need him?
I need Sean.
LAFC have lost their previous 4 finals, and it was CONCACAF Champions League when it was CCL, Campeones Cup, and then last year to the Columbus Crew, and then Leagues Cup. So they've dropped their last 4, Columbus Crew and MLS Cup. Anyway, whatever. Canadian Championship, Vancouver versus Toronto. So it's a couple of MLS teams. Bernardeschi to Insigne for the game winner against Forge FC, but it looks like Insigne will not play in an MLS game this weekend, according to John Herdman, our guy. Roberto, let's kick it around. Well, as we know, during his time with the New York City Football Club, Roberto, Dome Torrent never held back, correct? And
yes.
Well, he's now the coach at Atlético San Luis.
Good job. San Luis. Yes.
Leagues Cup. So this is Dome's feeling about Leagues Cup. This is a quote. It's terrible. I will look it up because I want to give credit where credit is due. It was from a Spanish Twitter account. The Leagues Cup is a joke. If I am here next year, I will use it as preseason for my players, said Torrent. It's a joke of a competition for Mexican teams who go abroad. We travel, we pack our bags, we travel again every 3 days. We go from Orlando to Montreal. When MLS teams come to play in Mexico, it'll be more fair. When you have a competition like this, you have no choice but to compete. Now that I have seen it, for me, it's a joke. I would imagine many feel the same way on the Mexican side.
Well, on the Mexican side, and there's reasons for it, and I think that there are strong reasons. I still think that this competition it's definitely fair. It's not that I think it's 100% fairer if the Mexican teams get to host as well. I know financially those are the issues, and money talks and bullshit walks, and that's what normally talks and very, very loudly within MLS and Liga MX circles. It's about making money. So it's very, very hard to have these games in Mexico because of that. But look, the way I look at it is if you're going to have a Mazatlan against Montreal and 3,000 people are going to show up, might as well just have it in Mazatlan. If you're going to have a Mazatlan Juarez and 500 people are going to show up, freaking have it in Juarez. I mean, what is going on? Just do it there. It's fairer. For what I'm hearing, MLS doesn't want to change a damn thing for next year. They're going to keep it the way it was this year, which, by the way, was a little fairer to the Mexican teams. The seeded teams got a chance to, lock down in one area. Like America played a game in San Diego, and then the rest of the games they wound up playing at Dignity Health Sports Park, where they lost to Colorado in penalty kicks. So they made Colorado travel to them. Last year, it would have been America traveling to Colorado. Maybe it would have gone better for them. Who knows? But at least they did that, and it cut down the amount of travel that Mexican teams had. But it's still not a fair competition. And I still think, and I strongly believe this, that it behooves American teams to go and play in those situations in Mexico. Be the road team in Mexico. You're going to learn so much more about it. Get a little bit out of your comfort zone. And go there and play, and you're going to be better for it. Maybe not that day, but definitely for the future.
No, there's little question about that. I agree 1,000% on that. So we'll see. Nothing's been decided about next year yet. Like I've said to you before, I have no interest in MLS versus MLS in that competition. MLS versus Liga MX, like New York City Tigres, what a match! And that can be what it's all about. Former New York City assistant to Ronnie Dyla, Efrain Juarez. How about this? And I spoke to John Rojas a little bit about it, and I know you'll have something to say. Atlético Nacional in Colombia has hired Efrain. It's his first managerial position. And when I talked to John today, and see what you think, Roberto, about my question was, isn't this a pressure spot to coach? And he used the example because he's coming kind of almost out of the blue as far as the supporters of Nacional are considering it. He said it would be like an assistant coach of a Colombian club team being named the head coach of LAFC. That was his comparison. It's just like, not from the pressure standpoint, just from the like shock standpoint. And
I think it's much stronger than that. I mean, this is a big team in Colombia. This is the
shock, just for the people not knowing who he is and like, who's this guy?
Yeah, but this is it. This is like I would take it further than that. I think he left it short, to be honest. This is a pressure cooker. You're sending him. You're feeding him to the wolves right now, and this is.
I'm not saying, I wasn't talking about the pressure. I'm talking about the shock of people not having any idea who he is. It's like they hire him for one of the big clubs. A pressure situation. It's like, who's this guy? So I hear what you're saying, but John was referring more to the shock value after we talked about the pressure. I think I juxtapose those without I made them too clearly together, and that's why you're. But talk about the pressure. Go for it, man.
I mean, it's sort of like if the Dallas Cowboys had a championship caliber team, and they found they found an assistant from, I don't know, the Jacksonville Jaguars to coach them to try to win the championship. It would be a shocker.
Or Fresno State.
Yeah.
Or who was the Notre Dame coach that came out of high school? Mueller? What was his name? Jerry Mueller? Remember him?
Oh, I don't remember that. Yeah.
Yeah, but anyway.
I mean, but it's putting somebody. I mean, and I know Efrain can handle it. He's a brilliant guy. So he can handle the pressure. But that's some place to go and get your first job. That really, really is.
Well, let's send all the positive vibes from the
absolutely.
New York City supporters and us. And now the guy he used to work for, Ronnie Dyla, is at a club, Al Wahda, WAHDA. It's in the UAE League in Abu Dhabi. I don't think we've talked about this. This was secure in July. So Ronnie's in the Middle East coaching.
Yeah.
And normally Efrain would, wherever Ronnie goes, that's where Efrain's going to go. And they were pictured together. They were going to games in England together, and they were in the midst of looking for something. So
well, there was a chance that when Efrain was here in New York, he interviewed for the Chicago Fire job.
Yeah,
and he was one of the 2 or 3 main candidates for that job that he didn't wind up getting.
Yeah, well, and that would have made at least that made some sense. Coming from a championship team and being able to bring that to Chicago, where they have still not made the playoffs since 2017, which was part of how that result was a D-word disaster in that draw at Citi Field. Patrick Vieira still no home. All that talk about men's national team and a couple of clubs came up. So I think he's either being picky or he's not being picked on. I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know which way it is. And Andrea Pirlo got sacked from Sampdoria. Now, they're playing in Serie B. They only have 2 points from their first 6 games or something like that. I don't know if I have the number of games proper, but he got the sack yesterday. So
did not even see that. Sorry to hear it.
Yeah, that's well, managing in football is it's about it, well, probably almost any sport. It's when are you getting fired? That's usually it.
Yeah, that, and then the other thing that I heard today when I was listening to Sirius XM and Tony Meola and Dunny were talking about this, there was a potential move, and I don't know if they completed it yet, of Matt Turner leaving Nottingham Forest to go to Crystal Palace, where he'll be the backup over there, because he's fallen to second backup in Nottingham Forest. The only game that he was on the bench for was the FA Cup game or the EFL Cup game, whichever cup game they had this week. He was on the bench for that, but he wasn't on the bench for the first 2 EPL games.
Yeah. No, that's
so. He needs to move out.
I have it as finalized, considering the number of errors I've made today. But I do have that as he has been loaned to Crystal Palace. But he's been loaned to Crystal Palace, where he'll be the backup. So he's gone from backup to the backup to backup, which that doesn't
move up.
him it's a move up. Doesn't promise him matches. I've made
You'd
that
hope
public.
that he'd get a chance to play in all the cups that they have, which a substantial amount of games as long as you continue to win.
The Carabao Cup, which looks like they're calling it Leagues Cup again. I don't know if somebody's doing that on their own or the Carabao's gone. I don't know, Roberto. I do not know. So you mentioned the national team. Hugo Perez is a former U.S. men's national team midfielder. He then
a great one.
National Soccer Hall. He's in the National Soccer Hall of Fame for his play, not for his coaching. But then he became a member of the U.S. Youth National Team staff. He was a technical director out on the West Coast, but he was the head coach of the 14s and 15s. Pulisic, McKennie, Adams. He had all these guys. So he had a lot of the guys that are currently hoping to advance in the 2026 World Cup. But he went to El Salvador too. So here's the story, Roberto, leading into this clip I'm going to play from my recent interview with him. He said he was in Fort Lauderdale in December of 2020, and he watched the U.S. defeat El Salvador 6-0. Now, not much longer thereafter, he got a call from the federation asking if he would take over the team, and he said yes. So, he played as head coach of El Salvador, the U.S., 4 times. So let's pick up the clip from there.
Second time we played in Nations Cup, they were coming in, and we had a meeting 2 nights before that game, and the U.S. was bringing everybody from Europe. Okay, so we made a list of all their players, how much they were worth, and which teams they were playing in. Okay, and we show it to our guys. Okay, I don't lie to you. Our value for the 23 players that we had in El Salvador came to maybe $3 million. When we looked at the roster of the U.S., it was more than $300 million. Okay, that was a comparison.
Yeah.
Okay, but I said to the guys, look, this is just numbers, and we know that they're good. We know that they play in AC Milan, they play in the English Premier League. But I said, you guys been trained to compete against them and go toe to toe, right? And we played 4 games. We lost only by 1 goal here in the U.S. Okay, and we tied both times in El Salvador.
Yeah,
and that showed me that even though we didn't have the resources, we didn't have the infrastructure, our players were not at the level as their players playing in those important leagues. When you have a vision and you have a desire and you convince players that they can do more than they're capable, there's always a chance.
I love that part. And aren't those the best coaches in the world? The ones that can convince their players that they have the ability to walk on water when many of them might have trouble walking on pavement. You know what I mean? I mean, he could
100%.
So
100%.
I tied that in to Mauricio Pochettino, and I told you I've been reading this book. So I think every show from now till the World Cup, I'm just going to read a little extra. But he was at Southampton. So one of the reasons he started making inroads as a coach was what he did at Southampton. And when he first got there, he had a coaches meeting, and he said to his coaches, these players are much better than they think. So that's that's why they call it manager. I remember talking to Pat Noonan once, and he goes, in America we call them head coaches, and everywhere else they call them managers. But aren't you real? You're a manager. You've got to get in the minds of players and things. You're not coaching at that point. You're a sports psychologist. You've got to figure out these things. And he said, well, I'm American. I'm going to keep calling myself a head coach. But the point was well made. But that, and those games that El Salvador played against the U.S., I mean, 2 0-0 draws at home and in El Salvador, and then 2 1-0 losses on American soil. So far cry from that 6-0 defeat,
I remember one of the games was played in I think it was there. Played in a driving rainstorm. Was that there? Or was that Honduras? It
I'm
was
not
one
sure.
of the two. And the U.S. It was like a crazy game. Of the players, it was like raining so hard. They loved it. They absolutely loved it. I can't remember if it was Salvador or Honduras, but there was one of those that was just absolutely nuts.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I mean, when you can convince people that they're better than they think they are, I mean, they can do extraordinary things. And we've talked about this before about how coaching has really evolved into, and the importance of the mental ability of the coach to be a psychologist and to be able to get the best out of them. And you can always hire guys, right, to run the X's and O's for you, but you have to have the overall control, and make guys believe that they can do things that are extraordinary, even above their abilities. And the best coaches are able to do that. And it doesn't have to be about X's and O's, because, as I said, you can hire guys for that. And we've seen a lot of that go on and a lot of that change. I remember seeing it when I was doing Nick games on the radio, when Jeff Van Gundy was around, and he had guys that ran the offense, ran the defense. And it wasn't like he didn't do any tactical stuff, but his main job was the psychology of the team and getting the best out of every single player. And it's good to see that other coaches, are doing this and succeeding with it. And I've always loved Hugo. I hope that he gets called in to be part of Pochettino's staff once Pochettino is ever announced, if
Well,
he can
that
ever
was
clear up whatever's going on with Chelsea.
we discussed that, and I said, and I've heard Tony Meola endorse Tab Ramos for that, and that would make sense too. I think either one of them would make sense because they have relationships. They have or both. They have relationships and have coached, a lot of these players, and they understand. It'll be interesting to see what Pochettino does. If you're a SiriusXM subscriber, it's only available on the app. But I do interviews sometimes. Obviously some are more than others, but this one, it was fun. Hugo has gotten to know me over the years, so he trusts me, and it was just a really, really good conversation, and very educational at the same time. One more story from that interview. So I don't know if you know this, Roberto, but while he was playing at Tampa Bay early in his career, he's like 24 years old, and it's pre-MLS. MLS had not yet been born, so these guys were playing Missile. That was indoor soccer was their big deal, and it was after the NASL and before MLS. So he's at Tampa Bay, and his coach has a relationship with Johan Cruyff at Ajax. So he sends Hugo to Cruyff for preseason for 2 weeks. Although he told Hugo he'll know whether you belong in 2 days. So if you get sent home in 2 days, he just didn't like it. He'll be very honest with you. He's not gonna screw around. Well, he kept bringing him back, and Hugo tells the story. And he's only spent 2 weeks there, and Cruyff wanted to sign him, but because he couldn't get a work visa because he didn't have enough caps. How about that? He didn't have enough caps. The Dutch had that rule. So Cruyff couldn't sign him, and he had to come back. But one of his last practices, it was a scrimmage. I remember him describing it, 9 versus 9. He was in the midfield. He opened up from the left, turned to his right, and hit a pass out to the winger. As he described it, it was a perfect pass. And Cruyff stopped and said, "That pass was wrong." And he's like, it goes, "Oh my God." He was embarrassed because he did it in front of the whole team, and he was just there for a few weeks. And but then he said, "Well, why was it wrong? I thought it was good." And Cruyff got the ball from him. He said it was like 30 yards away, and he pinged that MFer. He hit it as hard as he could, right to the front foot of the wide player, so that he could go forward. And he goes, "That's the way you have to hit it, because in Europe the defenders close you down quicker. So your pass was accurate, but it didn't have enough pace." And he said, that has stuck with me as a player and as a coach forever. And if you go back and watch some of Hugo's teams play, watch how they pass the ball, man. He doesn't accept anything else but pinging that thing, man. And so anyway, I won't tell anymore. But I thought it was I thought it was really, really a fun chat. Brooklyn FC, this USL Super League, they got some bad news. First of all, they have not announced their coach, although I've been told it's a young lady named Jessica Silva, who has coached in Canada, Portugal, and France a little bit. And she's been training the team, but they haven't announced it yet, so I'm not sure why that is. But they were also supposed to open against Carolina. I believe Carolina was the opponent this Saturday in Brooklyn at their home field that I can never pronounce the name of. Do you know how to pronounce that? It starts with an M.
I know where the Mets play.
Where the what?
Where the Cyclones play, rather.
Yeah. That baseball team. So
right. Out in Coney Island.
They said that the turf is unplayable, so they have postponed the game. So and they haven't played a game. They're the only team out of the 8 teams in this new top tier league in women's soccer that hasn't played, and so it's unfortunate. And so we'll see how that goes. And because I know a lot of people in the area were ready to go to the game, and
that's a shame. That really is a shame.
Now you mentioned
it's a nice little stadium, the Cyclones, where they play.
Remember, you just mentioned the Knicks earlier, right? So look what I put in my bag.
Oh, and there you go.
I sent you a picture. So I'm cleaning out my basement. For those who are just listening, not watching, this is New York Knicks World Champions 1970-71, their yearbook, and Willis Reed is on the cover. And it was so much fun to leaf through. But it reminds me too that we both ran into Stefan Bondi yesterday, a guy who's covered the Knicks for a very long time. A lot of people in the audience know who he is because they've read his stuff in both the Daily News and now the New York Post. And he was there doing a feature on Matt Freese. So in the New York Post, I don't know when that's going to be published, but look out for it, everybody, because if Stefan's writing it, it'll be good. And
Stefan's a huge soccer fan, just like his dad is. So
Philip Bondi,
and he covered New York City for a while when he was with the Daily News, basically on his own dime. So he would go on his days off, cover the team, and at least the Daily News would publish it, which is great. And it's good to see him doing a story about Matt Freese and New York City FC on the Post.
Yeah, that's excellent. That's excellent. Yeah, and his father, Philip Bondi, who he covered every World Cup, in his realm of whatever start to finish in his writing days. He's retired now, but what a great columnist, Philip Bondi.
One of the best on every sport. On every sport, he was fantastic. That's one of the glory days of the Daily News when they had Bondi and they had Lupica and. Before they basically fired everybody. Lupica's still there, but they had a bloodletting at the Daily News and, got a lot of guys who were, much cheaper or just take wire stories, which is like not the essence of journalism.
And RIP WCBS All News 88, a D, another D, all the D words. Deplorable is the first one that comes to mind, something we grew up with, but it doesn't matter anymore. AM terrestrial radio it's sinking and sinking and sinking, and it's just another example of that.
The thing is that, okay, so we have two different attachments to this, okay? Me as a listener, as a full-time basically listener, especially top of the hour, I would always go to hear the either the World News Roundup, which was twice a day, or the CBS News Hour, which is like the best 3-minute broadcast on radio. It's fantastic. Now what I've got to do, because that's a national broadcast and it's on the air in like 400 different stations around the country, but not New York anymore. I was hoping at least that they would take that part and move it to WINS, which is also owned by Odyssey. So now what I do is that on the Odyssey app, I'll go and I'll either top of the hour listen to KCBS, which is in San Francisco, and listen to their radio, which their format is very similar to WCBS was, 880. So I'll listen to that, and then they have the top of the hour, or if not, I'll just listen to it in podcast form on the Odyssey app. So those of you who miss that, but more than that,
no, it's
terrible for news locally and all the people that lost their jobs and all the coverage and all the great things that they brought attention to that the city, needed to be, that attention needed to be brought to. And there were, what was it, on the air for 57 years in New York.
Hey,
And
I
feel
had
terrible.
I had the privilege of getting sacked by WCBS 88.
Yeah, but you worked there, and that was the thing that I was trying to get to, and then I sort of lost my way.
That's
But
all right.
so I was a listener. You actually got to work there, which was great. Doing you did sports. You didn't do traffic,
sports.
right? Did
No
you
traffic.
do traffic?
No, I went to the traffic arena, where all the traffic, shadow traffic or whatever. But no, and it was me and like 60 other people got the pink slip. That's when it started. Like,
Odyssey came in. Yeah, anytime any of these things changes hands, and they're always looking for efficiencies, and they always, don't care about humans. It's the way of the business, sadly. Hopefully we can go back to a different time.
Well, we're in Columbus. We're both in our hotel rooms here. We just landed a couple of hours ago. It was very, very enjoyable to be able to present NYCFC Views live and give you our thoughts on this game tomorrow night with a bunch of other things. The airtime for both of us for our pregame shows is 7:15 Eastern. My pregame will have Nick Cushing, as it always does, one-on-one. Roberto has Julian Fernandez. He'll feature him during his pregame show. He in Spanish, we're in English. Sync us up and enjoy the game. I mean, this is going to be. I do predict a fun one. I'm a Columbus Crew fan. I'm a huge New York City FC fan, obviously, but I am a Columbus Crew fan. I like when these two teams play. I just hope New York City, and I know you said for the rest of the year. For me, let's just go short term tomorrow night. Let's see a Tigres effort. Tigres. They should be chanting that as they walk into the stadium. Tigres. And then we'll see a good one, I think. All right. Well, for sure. For Roberto, I'm Glenn. Shane, thanks for producing. And you've been listening, watching to NYCFC Views. Good night, everybody.
And that's a wrap. Hope you don't miss us too much until next time. Follow the Sick Podcast NYCFC Views on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook,